Hello, and welcome to Writers Group Therapy.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Roshni. We're writers helping writers with whatever writing ailments you might have.
Whether it's related to your craft or your career, we can help.
Are you ready for your session? The doctors are in. And if you like this episode and you like what you hear, make sure you check us out online at writersgrouptherapy.com. You can also find us on Twitter and Instagram at WG Therapy individually.
I'm Tom_Loveman on Twitter and Tom Loveman on Instagram.
And I'm at Roshni Lamino on Twitter and Instagram. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening to this podcast. And today we have two special guests with us, Christopher Renz and Gerard Bush, also known as Bush and Rentz. Their new film, Antebellum, came out in September of 2020 on Lionsgate, video on demand, and we'll just let them tell their story. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, thanks for having us.
And just to help our listeners out, which one of you is Christopher and which one is Gerard?
I'm Christopher, and I'll probably be speaking much less than Gerard.
I'm Gerard, and so I guess I'll be talking a lot.
So you'll be carrying the interview. All right.
Yeah,
thanks a lot, Christopher. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, that just goes right to the first question is, you guys were co-writers and directors on Antebellum, and you guys have worked together for quite a long time. How did that partnership begin, and how has it developed? And how does it balance? Because it sounds like one has a little more.
Well, we'll go in order, one at a time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because it's been over 12 years now, and we started our journey together in Miami. And when we first got together, I think it was the third or fourth day, we were at a dog beach with, at the time, was my new puppy. And we had a conversation about aliens and, this whole story that we created just sitting on the beach. And then we grabbed the dog and drove as fast as we could back to my place so that we could start writing it. And then, we looked up a day later, and this was right as the great economic implosion was taking place, the last one that we had before this mess that we're in now. And we were at ground zero because of real estate in Miami. And so, Christopher was lucky or very fortunate in that he had a great job at Crispin Porter Bogusky, which at the time was still probably the hottest ad agency in the country. And they had done massive layoffs, and Christopher had survived all of those. And I was really freelance and just trying to find, spots where I can get in at magazines and whatnot. And so we knew that we wanted to do something together, and we wanted to, eventually get into long form storytelling for film. But we also were really pragmatic in how we approached our goals and objectives, both individually, and then obviously we discovered that we shared that as a collective. That it's probably not a good idea to pack up all of our stuff and on a wing and a prayer and a short story and try to make something happen in LA. So we spent the next decade honing our skills together as filmmakers, as storytellers. I think that we spent a lot of time also individually trying to best understand who we are as artists, so that we could come together in a way that we would really contribute something meaningful, hopefully, to storytelling. And so we started our advertising agency, Bush and Rentz, and we worked really hard for 2 years to try to land clients any way that we could. We couldn't give ourselves away. It was very difficult. And then Moet and Chandon, we had an opportunity to pitch them in New York. And we spent, what little reserve we had left in our kitty to fly ourselves to New York to pitch this business against really big major agencies. And ultimately, we won the business, which changed everything for us. And then Porsche happened and Harry Winston, and I started working as on the side as a contributing creative director for Vogue Brazil, and we just were having a really pretty awesome time creating art together for these brands, and they trusted us and gave us really carte blanche at a time where the digital space was still so nascent, to a lot of these brands. And then when Trayvon Martin was murdered, I think, Christopher and I remembered why we first got together to start in this work. And when we started making money and we had responsibilities to employees and to clients, we started to lose sight of our original tenet of why we decided to come together and do this, which was to catalyze a national dialogue around a whole host of really important issues as it relates to race, as it relates to the climate crisis, as it relates to equality across the board. And I said to Christopher that I'm growing increasingly despondent and not really that happy about the work that we're doing. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life selling champagne. And he said, well, I feel the same way. So what are we going to do? And the next thing you know, we had Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who was the then head of the DNC, in our office just a week later, and talked to her about what we could do to raise these issues and how we could lend our creative and storytelling resources to help amplify these issues. And she needed to activate Black and brown voters in the midterm elections, which prior to Stacey Abrams in Georgia, she has somehow figured out how to do that. But it is, to say that it prior had been really difficult, really challenging, would be a gross understatement. So Debbie wanted us to figure out some content that would activate Black and brown voters in the midterm elections in Florida. And so that's when we started putting together these back to school ads for Bulletproof Vest with this beautiful little Black kid. We didn't think it was so controversial, but Young Turks picked it up and CNN picked it up, and it just kind of went from there. And then Harry Belafonte called and wanted us to work on a PSA for him. And he just basically said, look, I have very little budget, but I can fly you to Atlanta. And there you'll have your choice of some really high profile people to include in the PSA. And so we did that. That went wildly viral, and everyone was sort of talking about that for a few weeks. And then Jay-Z called, and the rest is just kind of history. We just kept following along and doing the work until we finally decided, after 10 years in Miami, going back to that original little conversation that we had at the dog beach at Biscayne Bay in Miami, only after 4 days of knowing each other, that we should try to do this. But then it took us 10 years to make it to LA. And I was really apprehensive about the move to LA, frankly, because I just thought, well, the comfortable shoe of Miami, we know people, we're not going to end up destitute and on the street. There were just a lot of concerns that I had because, we had known quite a few people that had come out to Los Angeles to make it happen, and it just didn't. But anyway, one of the great things about partnership, at least our partnership, is traditionally for us, it has been that I always would want to quit in the spring and Christopher would want to quit in the winter. And so it was never happening at the same time. So there was always a person to encourage you and tell us that we could do it and we would keep going. And then right as we got to LA, my father had just passed away suddenly before that. My brother had some problems and he was living in LA at the time and he eventually ended up dying quite tragically. And there was just a lot of upset. Our dog Cooper, she had the dog that was at the dog beach with us that 10 years prior. She was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and we only had a little bit more time with her. And so
Wow.
I was just in a lot of pain, and there was a lot of sadness, and Los Angeles was wholly unfamiliar to me, which really felt more disorienting than I think I could handle. And that's when I had the nightmare about Antebellum. And then, the next day I told C about it. That's what I call him, C. And then we started writing the short story. And by the way, we wrote the short story with no intention of a film. We just wrote the shorts. We have a really healthy respect for the written word, and we thought, we've been writing for Esquire and Time and Huffington Post and MSNBC and now Vanity Fair and these other. We thought we'd find a home for it, and it would be a good read, and that would be that. But then a dear friend of ours named Kenny Mack introduced us to the producer from Dallas Buyers Club, among other movies, Zev Foreman. And we had a television show that we wanted to discuss with him. And he said, I really can't bring any value to that. I don't do television. My focus is on film, which at the time, we didn't understand that huge gap between those two things and the different worlds that they live in terms of, who works in that business. But anyway, we were kind of perplexed by that because we were like, what's the difference? It's quality. Like, you should try to help us. But anyway, as he was getting up from our lunch, we said, well, we do have this short story, that you can read, just so that you understand like some of the things that we write and how we write. And then, maybe if there's eventually something that we can do together on the film side. And then I think it was less than a week later that he called us quite urgently saying that we needed to get together right away to discuss Antebellum. And then I think within a couple of weeks, he had us writing the script. And then it was 2 months later that we were out shopping the script at different studios. And we were pretty clear about what we wanted and how we wanted to tell the story. And I don't think that C and I either of us were in any rush to do it the wrong way. But then also we realized it's our first film. And so we didn't know who was going to bite. Luckily for us, we had some pretty aggressive suitors. And then we eventually, because of Nathan Kahane, who we had wild respect for, we really just liked him, felt simpatico, decided to go with Lionsgate.
That is an amazing story. That's like the true Hollywood dream right there. I mean, it just sounds like every piece fell into place. That's amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was also like, it was also incredibly difficult. I mean, there were times in Miami where, we couldn't pay the electricity. There were times that we were worried about like putting, it was, there were the McDonald's like 99-cent burger deals when we were, people that were truly trying to move toward plant-based. So it was 10 years of a lot of struggle to figure things out and to stay with it. And I think because we had been through all of that struggle in Miami, I don't think necessarily that I was willing to go back to that if things went sideways in LA. It just, but luckily, I guess what I'm trying to say and quite clumsily is that our overnight success was really over 10 years in the making. So what felt really fast once we got to LA, I think would only have been made possible by a couple of things, not the least of which was our naivete and not knowing how any of these things work and having an expectation that it should work. So I think, had we known that it wasn't supposed to work this way, I think, we may have created that reality.
Speaking about our naivete, when Zev Foreman, our producer, read the short story and then he said, okay, you guys go write the script. We had never written a script before. So it took a lot of Googling and formatting, and we didn't have any idea about the programs that are used for that. So Antebellum was written completely in Microsoft Word with a lot of like tabs and spaces and formatting. And
wow. Oh my
we
god.
Amazing.
we didn't
That's
even know about Final Draft at all until we got into production and they were asking us for the Final Draft file. And we kept saying, no, there are no more notes. This is the final draft.
We were like,
That is
what is your problem? We have sent you the final draft. That is the final draft. And then we didn't figure out until I was like, Christopher, what is their deal? It's been like 5 times that they have lined to get it emailed about the final draft. They've got it. And then, anyway, I forgot. But, it's embarrassing even today to think about how much we didn't know. But somehow we were protected by some omnipotent, mysterious force. So here we are.
That's actually really awesome. You're not jaded. It's really refreshing. I do want to take it back because something that Gerard said caught my ear quite some time ago. All right, so just so I got the timeline right, you have been working together for 12 years, you said, right?
Yep.
Okay, but after 4 days of meeting each other, you decided that you wanted to be writing and directing partners? Like, it takes me a year to figure that out with somebody. 4 days.
I mean, I think, look, C and I are I can't describe it. I communicate, I write for a living, but our sort of cosmic connection is beyond words. We really feel quite familiar to each other. And I don't know anyone that I trust more other than my mom and my sister than Christopher. And so, our connection is really, really deep. And I hope that, I think that we've done all sorts of things in past lives. And I hope that we do it again 1,000 more times from here. But, in the meanwhile, I think that, we have this responsibility to each other that we're able to create something and do something in partnership that feels very different than what it would be otherwise individually. And I don't know that there is another person on the planet that I could make this kind of work with, and vice versa. It's just one of those things that, as wild as it sounds, it felt predestined. It felt really comfortable, but then also challenging simultaneously. But yeah, if there's no real easy way to explain how and why it happened the way that it did, it just felt right.
That is amazing. May we all be so lucky. That is just, seriously, that is so cool. Now let's talk about the nitty-gritty of working together, because it is kind of unusual to have a co-directing team. Writing team, maybe not so much. But obviously, since you live together, it makes it a little bit easier. You don't have to Zoom. But who... Or, you could, I guess, if you really want to. Who does the main writing, or does one focus on plot, the other on character? What about when you direct together? How does it work? How do you guys make it work?
Well, there's not... I'll tell you, I mean, for both of us, solitude is incredibly crucial on the writing side of things. On the script side, it's really much easier for us because we kind of, if easy would be an appropriate word, it's kind of, we both know where we want to go and the painting we're trying to create together. And we're not going to fully realize it until we get it on the other side at the end. That doesn't mean that there are not going to be tons of rewrites and work that we have to do. But initially, we just go at getting it on paper. And so on the script, given the fact that C and I are very different in the way, in the time that we feel most comfortable in writing. For me, I am definitely a morning person, and I need that time by myself to really write. And I'll hand my pages over to Christopher, and he'll exchange pages with me, and he could write from 3 o'clock or sometimes 5 o'clock in the afternoon until 2 o'clock in the morning. We're just very different in that we're never writing in the same place at the same time the majority of the time. On the short stories, sometimes it could be that, I'm really far into a short story, or Christopher's really far into a short story, and that could be the kernel of the idea that we're going to use for the script. And like with Antebellum, that was my nightmare in vivid color, and so it was much easier for me to write that and really put it to paper. And Christopher helped me polish it and edit it and organize it. But on the script side, it is literally 50-50 and deep. And sometimes we don't necessarily agree, rarely, but we don't necessarily agree on where we want to go in a particular direction with a character. And I think that what's held us in good stead is this agreement that we've made to say, we're going to defer to the person that feels the most passionate about any given issue as it relates to our work. But on occasion, rare occasion, we both are equally passionate about a particular thing. And we will debate our points, and sometimes argue about it. And it takes a while for us to figure it out. But when we do, I think that the material, I think what we're writing is the better for it. I don't know what you would say on the directing side, C.
I think that kind of informs the directing side and is really helpful, because we work through all of our issues, and by the time we finish the script, we both can see the film. So when we get to the set, we know exactly what we want. So there isn't any of that, those disagreements. It's really us doing everything we can to make sure that our vision is put on screen.
And we're also both, I would say that, most people that know us or that have worked with us would say that we're pretty obsessive compulsive, but it's something that we try to manage by being overly prepared and knowing our script inside and out better than anyone, and knowing exactly, like when we sat with our DP Pedro Luke before starting, we would spend between 6 and 8 hours a day in pre-production drawing out our storyboards, our entire, we knew exactly how we wanted everything to be, every shot, the way that it was going to be laid out, that we wanted a continuous shot to begin the film so that it felt immersive, that you were immersing yourself in this nightmare behind, the veneer of the plantation where all of this idyllic living is enabled by the gross abuse of other human beings. So we were really clear about all of the things that we wanted to see and that we want to see on screen. I think that it's respectful to your department heads and your entire crew to have clarity on what you want and how you want to see it on the screen, and being over prepared. And I think for us, we've heard of a lot of directors that take other scripts and are working on other people's scripts and putting it on screen, and they do it beautifully. I don't know that we've cracked that code yet, because for us, it's really about what we write on the page, and everything. It's almost as though we have to author the film as well as shoot it. And so it just makes, for us, we've never known anything any differently. So it's just a part of our process: short story, script, and then screen.
It sounds like you guys really just have a great passion for the creative process. And I really like how you work the social issues into your storytelling. I mean, Antebellum obviously has some not so hidden, relatable topics in it for today. I'm really interested in your next project, Rapture. Sounds very interesting. How does that fit into your goals of storytelling with the disenfranchised and the marginalized? What's the goal you're going for with that story?
Well, I mean, look, with Rapture, and I don't want us to sound, in any way precious about the work that we're doing, or that we think that our work and the subject matters that we would like to pursue are any more important than, someone, a filmmaker that's able to make you belly laugh at a time that you really need it. It's just that for us, we have some really deep concerns about, as I mentioned earlier, a whole host of social issues. With Rapture, without saying too much, we are most interested in the pursuit of the weaponization of religion, and also that we are in a situation now where the climate crisis is, with everything that's happening, that happened at the Capitol, the tumult that we're experiencing in the country now, that is so reflected in what you see in Antebellum. I think that none of these crises are taking a break out of courtesy to the other. COVID is not taking a break because we can't seem to get it together as a country. And the climate crisis is still burning out of control. And if we don't do something about it yesterday, I think that most scientists would agree that we're reaching some stage of irreversible, which perish the thought of what that looks like. And so Rapture really takes a deep dive into, and I hope, Christopher and I, we're crazy about the story, and it feels really big and biblical and epic. It's a big film. But I think, I'm pretty sure that it is going to stir a big conversation in a different way than Antebellum. But yeah, if I told you everything, it would ruin the film. But
yeah, don't spoil. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of came into the writing and filmmaking world similar to you guys. I actually worked in advertising and marketing, and it was later in life. I think I started doing it in my 30s, and not later in life, but I didn't come out of film school, and
right.
start doing this. So, what advice do you have to people who get this bug that they want to create and want to do this? What advice would you give them to someone else in your kind of situation?
Well, I would like to be able to say something. Let me preface it first by apologizing if I sound too new age, because I don't want to sound new age. But
okay.
I truly believe that no one has any right to rob you of your purpose, of the thing that makes your heart sing, and if that is telling stories, for film or television, or short stories or books, I think that it's really important that, outside of all of the mechanics that come along with developing a skill as it relates to the craft of writing, I think that it's of equal, if not more, importance to try to silence as much as you can that inner critic that's constantly stalking you and making you look at the world and other people in a way that doesn't feel like it's conspiring for this destiny that you're in pursuit of. I think it really ultimately is up to you as a person to recognize that the quality that is most needed to do this work is perseverance. There is a stamina required that is in many ways can feel supernatural because, you know, you're going to want to quit and you can feel frustrated and upset. I know there are times when I'm writing something where I think to myself, like, who do you think you are? And this is like ridiculous. And like, no one's going to want to read this. And this is stupid. Right. So, but I have to talk myself down off of that ledge and continue doing what I feel inspired to do. I don't know if that's good advice, because it's not really specific and it can sound a little vague and new age, but you know, it really just comes down, in my humble opinion, to stamina.
I think that's excellent. And Christopher, how about you? Any closing thoughts?
My advice would be to download Final Draft first.
Very wise. Anything else?
I really mirror everything Gerard said there. I mean, you do get to a point where, you know, the critic in your head starts getting to you, and just pushing past that is really where things start to flow.
Awesome.
But I mean, Gerard said it so well.
Well, Gerard, Christopher, thank you so much for joining us. If people want to find you online, how can they do so?
And I've been taking a little bit of a sabbatical from social media, but yeah, I'm there at Gerard Bush on Instagram and at Gerard Bush on Twitter. And then we also have at Bush Rentz on Twitter and Instagram, BUSHRENZ as in zebra.
Not on Facebook.
We've never been on Facebook, but I don't even know how to operate Facebook, but yeah, Instagram and Twitter.
Terrific. And then when will Antebellum is out right now, and when will Rapture be headed to the theaters or video on demand?
Well, we're headed into pre-production now very soon, and then it's just about, you know, these, you know, hopefully it's all about COVID regulations and us like working around all of these things and where we're going to shoot, but we're super optimistic, as is the studio now, that we're going to be able to move forward pretty aggressively now that things are shaping up. It doesn't feel like it, guys, for so many of us right now. It feels really terrible and crazy out. But, you know, there's a light at the end of the tunnel with these vaccinations. And for us, being able to vaccinate the entire production is going to be key.
Awesome.
We've been writing away and ready. After that, we have Inkwell, our show with HBO, that we'll be ready to go into after Rapture.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we sold, like, our show for HBO is all we can say is like black surfers.
Okay.
Yeah, but like it all happens in Malibu, like Southern California, Malibu. But there's a crazy sort of supernatural. We're extremely excited about that show. In fact, that's what we first wrote when we got here, that we were trying to sell Zev Foreman on, and he wouldn't even listen because he doesn't do television. So it's funny, we've come full circle, and now we just closed the deal with HBO Max for Inkwell.
Well, congratulations.
Wow, congratulations.
All right, everybody. So make sure you check Renz and Bush out online. Check out Antebellum currently on video on demand, and Rapture and Inkwell coming soon. And we will talk to all of you soon.